I used to be that minister that they would call behind the scenes and they would be like, girl. What I hear is a lot of insecurities about how they look. If you've not done anything about it, there's already a narrative out there.
Yeah. Dress like a manager. People will look at you weird at first.
Yeah. Caring about your parents, I wouldn't consider it to be vanity. I would consider it to be stewardship. As Christians, we are representatives. Like, we are ambassadors. I think there's this whole big thing about individuality. But I think we have to put that within the context of you're not really your own.
Yeah. Absolutely no point in looking 10 out of 10, smelling 10 out of 10, dressing 10 out of 10. And then you open your mouth and it's just like, what is she talking about?
So my wardrobe is done in such a way I don't even have to think.
Welcome to the Fruitful Woman Podcast, where we talk all things productivity and personal development, but from a faith perspective. I'm your host, Funbi. Have you ever thought about how your image and personal style could affect you reaching your goals? We often hear quotes like, first impressions matter and dress how you want to be addressed. So clearly it must matter. Today, I'm sitting with an image consultant and a style coach who works with women just like me and you to achieve a powerful personal brand that strategically positions you as an authority in your field. Today, we're in conversation with Tosin Alatise. I'm really excited to have this conversation because it's not often that on a productivity or personal development platform that we would talk about image.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about that. So why don't you start off with telling us a little bit about you and a little bit about your role in your business in as a style consultant and an image consultant.
Yeah. So my name is Tosin, like you said. So I do a lot of things. So I'm in the corporate sector. I work in risk and compliance as an analyst, as a senior analyst. But I'm also an entrepreneur. So I own two businesses. One is an events planning company, and Anna Gold, which is my baby. And that's the image consultancy and like personal brand coaching business. I'm also an ordained minister and leader in my church. So yeah, I do quite a couple of things. And Anna Gold started officially in 2019. And it started out as just like styling. So I was just a personal stylist. I just absolutely loved to just dress women up and just make them look good, put outfits together and things like that. But then I transitioned it to an image consultancy, which there's a slight difference between a personal stylist and an image consultant, and we can kind of go into it, but they do work hand in hand. And so I transitioned it to like an image consultancy, which kind of has to do with more than just putting on nice clothes. It kind of has to do with how you present yourself, like more like rounded, and stuff. So yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit more about how you would help somebody achieve that personal brand through style and image consulting?
Yeah, so an image consultant, essentially what we do is that we help you like align your external appearance with your like personal and professional goals and aspirations. So the two are quite linked. So how I will work with someone is I want to understand like where they're currently at and where it is that they're trying to get to. And some of the questions I would usually ask is what is the message that you're trying to pass across? And I think a lot of times people don't know this, right? But whether or not you're intentional about crafting a personal image, if you've not done anything about it, there's already a narrative out there. I think people don't realize it. So whether or not you're just being passive, whether it's in your workplace, whether it's on social media or anything like that, there's already a narrative. So you might as well take control of that narrative and be intentional about the image that you're trying to pass across based on your goals. You know, whether it's in your business, you know, what is it that you're trying to pass across to the target audience? Or whether it's at work, what image are you trying to pass across to the people who, you know, have the power to take you from where you are now to where you need to go to? And I think based on the answers to that, I would then look at where they're at now, look at maybe things like their social media, look at how they're coming across, you know, look at you know, how they communicate with people online. Look at, you know, some of those things that stand out and say, there's kind of a misalignment here. If you're trying to get to, I'll give an example within the corporate space. You're currently like a junior analyst and you want to get to a senior analyst. And some of the things I'm seeing is like, you know, there's just like a lack of professionalism in the way that you show up or in the way that you speak. Then I'll be saying, I think the way you communicate online, it needs to change, for example. So, yeah.
So you basically will help with like an entire rebrand.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like a full package.
That's such a unique role. I haven't seen many people doing that. So it's really, really interesting. And what kind of impact have you seen it have? For example, do you actually see that it boosts people people's productivity or boosts their ability to actually reach their goals? I'd love to hear like a testimonial of like someone you've worked with before.
Yeah. So I think what happens is that, and another thing with image consultancy is that people struggle to see the direct link between, you know, maybe if you help me change up how I look or anything like that, how that can affect me, you know, maybe reaching my business goals or my professional goals. But I think a lot of times what really happens is the build is the confidence aspect. So I think a lot of times when I work with people, what I see is an increase in their confidence, is an increase. There's more self-awareness in their value. There's more so, because a lot of what I do with image consultancy is a lot of self-reflection. There's a lot of asking questions. Okay, what are your values? Because it's not just about presenting a particular perception. I think your values need to align with what it is that you're presenting, right? Yeah. So a lot of times you can just see that increase in confidence, like when a person is now aware that, okay, these are my values. And when a person is more confident, you know, in how they look, the truth is that when you look good, you feel good. Yeah. And I think studies have also shown that there's a link between when you look good, you feel good, and there's this psychological aspect. It's connected to something in your brain. Yeah. It boosts your morale, it boosts your confidence. And when you feel confident, when you have that morale, I think it's that link to then now feeling confident in maybe taking steps in relation to your certain goals. You're in a room full of people, you feel more confident to actually go up and walk to somebody and tell them about you, tell them about what you do, and actually say, hey, do you know what? Let's connect, let's talk. I would like to talk to you about, you know, something that I'm doing, about a project I'm working on. So I think it's the link between the confidence. And so there was a lady that I worked with, and she had been trying to, like, you know, start up her counseling business. I think she had attempted it a couple of times, but she just kind of felt a bit, you know, like she wasn't qualified enough. You know, she didn't feel like she could show up. I think there was also a little bit of insecurity about how she looked. And I think people underestimate, sis, how the way people look, how it affects their ability to show up. A lot of times when I've spoken to women or when I'm having one-to-one sessions, when I ask them, oh, what is it that is preventing you from actually showing up? What I hear is a lot of insecurities about how they look. Wow. So they think that there's a particular image that is related to the kind of people that need to show up in this capacity, and they look nothing like that. And so there was this lady that I was working with. And then so when I began to ask her questions, you know, things like that, I realized that the issue was the lack of confidence and just the insecurity about how she looked. And it was simply just a matter of getting her to just make more effort with, you know, if she wants to look a bit more, you know, then she should just do that. And I think when she started to do that, she felt more confident. And the next thing I knew, she started putting out masterclasses. I think she held her first conference last year, like, because she's also like a Christian woman in ministry. She held her first conference last year, which was a big conference as well. And seeing that, I was just like, wow, she had the skills, she had the ability, she just didn't feel confident enough to show up. Yeah.
And confidence is so important. So I can see how like your physical appearance can literally have that direct link on whether you shop, especially in the age where everything is online. Everything is like, you need to do it in video form. You need to be on the front of your brand and everything like that. So absolutely, it will stop you from starting that business or, you know, starting that ministry if you're just not confident in yourself. So absolutely. It actually, what you say actually reminds me of a friend in uni. We had an exam and she turned up like all glammed up, and I was like, why do you look like that? We have an exam. She was like, I feel really terrible about this exam, so I'm dressing how I want to feel. And it works for her. And that was the first time I had heard something like that. And I was like, interesting. And similar to what you were saying about work, when someone is quite junior at work and you know that you want to progress, don't join other people in wearing, you know, those casual clothes. Dress like a manager. People will look at you weird at first when you're wearing your blazer and your heels because they'll be like, who does she think she is? But people will take you more seriously.
Yeah, they will.
And I find that, you probably find this in because you work in the legal world as well. Where, as a young Black woman, sometimes people see you and they're like, she's a solicitor because she looks so young or whatever. Maybe because she's Black, whatever. So sometimes I do have to go that extra mile when I'm meeting clients to be like, okay, let me look a bit extra smart today. Put my glasses on, blazer and everything. Because first impressions actually matter. And let's talk about that, first impressions. Yeah. You know, what's your advice for someone who, you know, maybe they go to an interview or even going on a date or whatever it may be, like first impressions, why do they matter so much?
First impressions matter. And I think this is because, like, we live in a fast-paced world. I think people make decisions very quickly. Yeah, that's true. And I think first impressions, like, it's a way of putting out a message without even having to speak sometimes, because it depends. You'll find yourself in so many situations where you won't really have the opportunity or the time to explain the value that you have to bring, right? So sometimes you don't really get that time. Sometimes it's just a matter of people scrolling. These days, all you need to do before you pick like a vendor, right? You go on social media. It's not like you've spoken to them a lot or you've heard, how they, explain things or what it is that they have to offer. Sometimes you go on social media, you scroll. There's a perception, there's something that is being communicated, first impression, and then maybe later you can find out more. But it's important because it communicates something without having to speak. And I think first impressions linger. They linger. Yeah. I think if you find yourself like in an environment where you're networking, even if you think about it and you go home and you're meditating upon like maybe that event that you went to, it's usually maybe like a conversation you've had with somebody maybe like for like 5 minutes, or somebody that you saw. I remember going to a woman's event and I saw this lady, and in that event, I didn't really get an opportunity to speak to her, but she just walked into the room and she just radiated so much confidence. Like she looked, it's very rare, right? I mean, I'm very like complimentary of people. Like I go to people like, oh, I really love your hair. It's just my personality. It's like, I love how you look. I really love your shoes. Even things that normal people wouldn't notice, I would notice it. But this lady, she was jaw-dropping gorgeous. Like she just had this ambience and it stayed with me for a long time. I remember going to another event and seeing her again. I was like, I have to speak to this lady. Because from that first time, she didn't leave my mind, and we didn't even have a conversation. So I think first impressions, they last, they linger, they matter. And I'm not saying that it's all about that, because, sometimes people don't just make decisions based on first impressions, but a lot of times they do. So you do have to consider that. You have to take that into consideration.
How do you balance that with don't judge a book by its cover? Because I understand the sentiment behind it, because you don't want to judge people. At the end of the day, like they say, God looks on the inside.
On the inside,
it's what's on the inside that matters. This flesh will pass away. So it's like, it's important to look good and everything like that. How do we balance that with don't judge a book by its cover?
So this one is a little bit, at the end of the day, right, we live in a world where we are having to interact and communicate with human beings. God looks at the heart, but unfortunately,
we look at the flesh. It's true.
As I'm communicating with you, I can't really see your heart at the end of the day.
It's a door.
Exactly. It's just a door. So I mean, I don't think that we should solely judge people based on their appearance. I do think that we have to be the kind of people that value substance, that value, what is coming from inside, like the things that people actually have to offer. So I think we should, be intentional about engaging people and not just going solely off appearance. But at the same time, having said that, we do live in a world with human beings. Like people go off perception. Like when you walk into a supermarket, right, you don't know what's in that box. Like you're just gonna go based on the cover, right? So for example, you look at Marks and Spencer's and how they package things, and you look at like maybe something like Lidl, and no shame to Lidl, by the way, I absolutely love Lidl, but the truth of the matter is there's a difference, right? You look at Marks and Spencer and you look at the way they package their stuff, and that's the cover, right? To be honest, how are you judging it? You're just like, this is giving luxury, this is giving, I'm absolutely going to enjoy what it is that I'm spending this money on. And then you look at Lidl and it's giving,
fell off.
So while I don't think that we should judge people solely, but give yourself an advantage. Basically. Give yourself an advantage, right? Like it might seem like carnal, it might seem like, people should only be looking at what people wear, but you're not helping either. Like if I want to honestly, even as a Christian, right, if I want to, as much as I'm led by God, if I want to employ a manager for my company, and 2 people walk through the door and somebody has taken the time to put thought into how they looked, and somebody showed up with a hoodie, jeans, knowing fully well that you're coming for a managerial role. This is not a managerial role in River Island. It's a managerial role within a corporate sector. Honestly, until maybe I hear them speak for a length of time, I'm going to
go off what you have.
I'm going to go off what I have, and I'm going to be more inclined to judge what I can see and say, okay, this is somebody who has taken the time, they've thought about it, and they're serious about this job. Whereas this person, the impression, because it's only a perception, it might be wrong, but it's still a perception. Whereas the impression and the perception I'm getting from this other person is that they don't care. So you want to give yourself an advantage. You know, you want to be intentional about putting thought into it, about just making sure that there's nothing against you, you know, fully being prepared for that opportunity. And if they turn you down, it's not because you didn't do your best.
It's essentially, it's a balancing act. I think the word says we should be kind. It also says we should be hospitable to all men, because you don't know who you're entertaining. So I think, you know, you might not really like somebody's appearance or how they're behaving or whatever, but still be kind. Still be the way Jesus is. And then, like you say, have that advantage. It's not the most important thing, but it's that cherry on top that could open a door that would have otherwise been closed. So it is important. It's not the most important, but it is important. Absolutely, I agree with you. Let's talk about vanity.
Okay.
So how do we balance this? Because of course we don't want to put too much emphasis on image alone. So how do you balance the whole vanity thing as someone who cares about makeup, fashion, hair, clothes, image in general? How do you balance it? Have you ever, you know, found yourself in a place where you think, oh gosh, am I a bit vain?
No. I mean, I think maybe some time ago, I think maybe when I was still like early on in like my walk with God, when I was still dealing with a lot of like insecurities where, you know, I felt like my identity was based on how I looked. Right. So I think there was a period in my life where I did kind of struggle with that. And so, for example, like I wouldn't leave my house without makeup, you know, that kind of thing. I felt like I always had to be 10-10 all the time. Like, but I think that was just coming from a place of not fully understanding that my identity is who I am in Christ, and it goes beyond, you know, what I look like. Right. But I think after going on that journey with God and getting to a certain place in understanding that, if we actually look at the word vanity, like vanity means, I think it's like a prideful, I think one of the definitions talking about a prideful way of esteeming one's appearance. And I think it also there's some other definitions that says like there's emptiness and void. So it's like esteeming your appearance with no substance or value. I think those are some of the definitions of vanity. So caring about your appearance, I wouldn't consider that to be vanity if there is an emphasis on the inner part, essentially your heart, your character, and all of those things. I think that there is a balance. And honestly, I see caring about your appearance as stewardship. I think if you think about it, like we are supposed to be representing God in the best way. As the even with our bodies being and I think another thing that people think about caring about your appearance means that I think they have a certain image in mind about what caring about your parents looks like. I think, for example, like as a Black woman, maybe that image could be having the latest wig, wearing like full makeup, you know, wearing nails, and all of those things. But to each person, it's different. I've had clients where they're more natural, they're more laid back, and caring about their appearance is actually just going to wash their hair like every 2 weeks.
Having good skin.
For example. It's about having like just elevated casual wear, you know, that don't make them feel like, even though they work from home most of the time, that don't make them feel like just lazy. So caring about your parents, I wouldn't consider it to be vanity. Like I would consider it to be stewardship and just representing God in an excellent way, I would say. I think you'll be venturing on the point of vanity if there's no work being done on your heart, on your substance. Like you actually have nothing to offer. And it's more about getting attention to your physical appearance than to what it is that God has placed on the inside of you. I think looking good should be supplementary to your purpose. So if you understand that you're called to something, you're called to an industry, you're called to a sector, I think it's just about showing up in the best way you possibly can, which includes your appearance. Like you don't want not showing up in that way to be a disadvantage, to not even get into the opportunity of, you know, showing people what you actually have to, which it can. I don't think we realize it, but it can. Like, if you don't show up in the best way, you're at a disadvantage, depending on the sector that you're in, on the industry that you're in, or what it is that you're trying to do. So I don't know if that answers the question,
no,
but
it
I
does,
think,
yeah.
it's a balance. I think if you're doing it with just drawing attention to your physical appearance, which it happens. I think we've all been there sometimes, like where it's all about, wanting to get validation, especially wanting to get validation from men, wanting people to be like, oh, girl, you look good. If it's all about that, rather than you showing up in the best way you possibly can so that you can carry out your assignment, you can do what it is that you want to do, and people can be drawn to the message that you have to offer or to your work. I hope that answers the question.
No, it does. I know a lady who she says a lot of people come up to her and says, oh, you're so pretty, or I like your hair. She'll be like, thank you, do you know Jesus? Straight up, like, let's use this as an evangelism
Let's use this as an opportunity.
And I love that, like, very direct. It's really, really good.
I just want to say, like, the same thing happens to me all the time. Like, even when I do it, and we'll probably get into it, how you can actually develop a system in your life that means that, because when people see me, they think I'm there, like, spending hours picking an outfit, or like, I've probably really thought about, like, what I'm going to wear. Honestly, sis, what I've done is that I've created a system for, like, my wardrobe and stuff like that. So I know my style, I know the things I like. So my wardrobe is done in such a way I don't even have to think. Like,
let's talk about that.
Yeah, like, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter what I pick. I'm always going to look presentable. So it's not like I have to spend hours, like, because I read your newsletter talking about systems.
Yes, it's needed in every aspect.
Yeah. And people come to me and be like, oh, Tosin, I really like what you're wearing. And I always use it as an opportunity to talk about something, whether it's to talk about God, from an event. Also, how are you finding this event? So engage in, like, a meaningful conversation.
Yeah, that makes sense. So tell me about the systems.
Sis, listen, I think you just need to have a system. So, for example, what I would say is, so look at your lifestyle, right? Where do you spend most of your time? If you're somebody who you have to go into the office and most of your time, like 70% of your time is spent in the office, which means that you have to wear formal attire, then your wardrobe should not have 80% casual wear. Because what does that mean? When you wake up on a Monday morning or Tuesday morning, you will probably be like, what am I going to wear? Right? So if you curate your wardrobe to reflect your lifestyle, for example, then that takes off a lot of decision fatigue. If you understand your style, you understand your body. I also, like, do a lot of work on, like, body type, body shape. So you have an understanding that, oh, these are the things that work for me. These are the things that don't work for me. It doesn't mean that you can't stray away from it sometimes, but you have a foundational understanding of, okay, based on my body type, this is what works. Even when you're shopping, I don't take too long to make decisions because I understand what works for me and what doesn't really work for me. And I don't have, like, things like, torn clothes in my wardrobe. I always do, like, a declutter every, like, 6 months, for example. And so my wardrobe is set up in such a way where my casual wear is a little bit elevated. So I know that I'm a, like, denim jeans, blouse type of girl. I have so many different kinds of denim jeans and blouse. So it doesn't matter which one I pick. It's gonna go. My work wear, I don't really like dresses that much. I prefer, like, trousers, and I love baggy clothes. Like, I just think I just like the look of it. So you'll hardly find, like, really tight clothes in my wardrobe. So a lot of my clothes are, like, overly, like, oversized and stuff like that. So I think understanding your personal style, doing a declutter every so often, if you know that you'll have to do, like, presentations all the time, ensuring that you have enough blazers and things like that. And that way, you just don't even have to think about it. Yeah,
that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I need that. So I'm going to be doing that this week. You were talking about matching your wardrobe to your lifestyle. And obviously, as Christians, modesty is a big thing.
Yeah.
Have you been shopping on places like
my
PLT
sister
recently? It's so difficult. How are you navigating modesty?
Yeah.
And talk about how when people rise in terms of influence, power, automatically they become more modest.
Yeah.
I've noticed that. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. You said when people rise, that they become more
like
modest.
If you look at the first ladies of the world, like, they're all very, very modest.
Yeah. That's true. So I think the first thing I want to say about modesty is that I think modesty is a posture of heart. So I think it's more of, like, the state of your mind and your heart towards, like, how you can, what it means to represent God. I think you have to have an foundational understanding that as Christians, we are representatives, like, we are ambassadors. And so you can't live, because I've heard people say, I think there's this whole big thing about individuality, right? And it's not like I'm against individuality, but I think we have to put that within the context of you're not really your own, like as Christians, like we are submitted to a God, like we are ambassadors. We are ambassadors of a kingdom, and that kingdom has rules, that kingdom has culture, that kingdom has values, that kingdom has morals, that kingdom has principles. And so I think when we have that state of mind, and I think the heart posture, honestly, sis, I think it cuts away a lot of debates that we have about, modesty. I'll be honest with you, dressing and clothing was probably one of the biggest things that I kind of struggled with in church and in the ministry. I remember being ordained, and I used to be that minister. I used to be that minister that they would call behind the scenes, and they would be like, "Girl, we think your dress is a little bit too short." I'm like, "Really? I didn't know." They were like, "We saw that picture you posted on Instagram. Do you not think that top is a little bit too low?" I have people they'll forward my pictures to my pastor, sis, and be like, "Oh, we saw your leader. Her picture is a little bit, and so, but I think when I changed my mindset, and I started to ask myself questions like, how much can I glorify God with my life rather than, how much can I get away with? I think if we change the question to how much can I actually glorify God? Honestly, you see the things we battle with. Oh, is my dress too short? Is my top too... It didn't become a problem anymore, because I used to be like, oh, but it was so like technical. I'd be like, oh, but my dress, but it's here. And then we get to a point where it's just like, what is the line? Who determines whether it should be just above the knee or, just below the knee? So I think it's a heart posture. I think you need to be asking yourself the question, how much can I glorify God rather than how much can I get away?
Yeah.
And regarding the point that you brought up about like, when people rise up in power, they become... I think it's because being covered up actually is associated with like class and luxury and value. And I think that, when people wear things that are revealing, it's more associated with, not as classy. Yeah. So I think that's the reason why when people rise in power, because you see it like with like the wealthy people, like, the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. There's a certain way that they dress.
And it's like non-negotiable. You don't see
it's non-negotiable.
Like, I don't know. Have we seen a rebellious first lady who's like, nah,
no. The one person who I thought was maybe going to be, but even her, like Melania Trump, Donald Trump's wife, because she used to be like a model and all of this stuff. And there's a lot of like controversial things about her past and her career and her history before she married Trump and before she became like the first lady. even when she was not first lady, she continued to stay cover up, because now she's in a certain position of influence, of power, and it's associated with that.
Absolutely.
I mean, even though I've met people who, I'm not the type of person to just look at someone and be like, oh, she must be like, no, it's not. I wouldn't do that. But I mean, if we're being honest, I think you can kind of see how, it makes sense.
Absolutely. Let's talk about behavior then, because I know as part of your image consulting that behavior is a big part of it, and etiquette. Let's talk about that. What kind of things are we supposed to be looking out for in our behavior? What behaviors do we do that kind of betray what our brand should be?
Yeah. So I think with that, it's things like, respect. It's things like, being polite. It's things like active listening. Like, so I think some people, for example, you go online, right? And you would see in the comments, like people arguing with their customers and just being so rude. Like, there's times where I can see that, okay, like the customer or the client is doing too, like they're probably in the wrong. But I think how you address a situation like that is really important. Like, this is your brand here. Like, this is you here. And I think there's ways to address things like that. So I think it's about being kind. I think it's about things like empathy. It's things like compassion, things about actually, caring about what the other person has to say. Sometimes you walk into networking rooms and it's so evident just in the way people speak, in the way they interact, that it's all very transactional. And I think sometimes we forget that we are Christians and we're actually supposed to be selfless. It's more about giving and more than what we can receive. So I think behavior is about like, do I have a heart of service, even to the people around me, even to my customers, even to my clients, even to people at work? Do I have a heart that is always wanting to like help out where I can, rather than one of just pride, and arrogance, and more about just being, transactional and being disrespectful simply because you believe that you're in the right. When, the Bible says that, if they slap you on the left, what do? You turn the other cheek. Not that you don't receive slaps, please. Don't receive slaps, but you get the point.
Yes,
So I think behavior is more about how you actually like interact and those values, like the fruits of the spirit. That needs to show up, because I think we leave that at the door when it comes to like our work and our business and in a lot of these other areas. But I think we also have to remember as Christians that these things are important, like the faith aspect, the patience, the loving kindness, showing mercy, showing grace, being respectful, actually, and genuinely, not that, because I think sometimes with this personal brand image thing, there can be a fine line. It can be, I'm just going to put up this image because I know that that's what is going to help my brand, but it's not genuine and it's not authentic. But it's actually genuinely showing kindness. It's genuinely listening. It's genuinely being patient with people. It's genuinely extending grace. And you can tell these things. You can tell when people are just faking it, and you can tell when it's real. And I think that when you have that kind of behavior, I think the impact and the influence that you have maybe with your customers or like with the people that follow you, or with even within the context of ministry with, the members of your church, is more authentic. It's more genuine. There's quality sort of relationship there. So
it's so interesting because, we're talking about image, but a lot of the answers have been about your inward work and things like that. So it all starts from within. There's absolutely no point in looking 10 out of 10, smelling 10 out of 10, dressing 10 out of 10. And then you open your mouth and it's just like, what is she talking about? Or like her behavior is just crazy. And, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on, because it's like the fruitful woman is supposed to be a well-rounded woman, bearing fruit in season, in every season, in all areas of her life. And I think image can really just betray everything else so it just all works together, essentially. What do you think are some of the biggest mistakes people make with their personal brand or personal style or image?
There's quite a few. So I think one of the things is that people think that it's all about like your outward appearance. So it's all about how you look, like your clothes, like your dressing. And so people spend so much time, it's not that you shouldn't, like they invest in it. Like, that's why you find people doing photo shoots, and then they'll do their rebrand, they'll get their really nice pictures. But the content, like the substance, is actually lacking. So I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking that it's all about the outward appearance. And with image consultancy, they actually call it like the ABCs, which is appearance, behavior, and communication. So people focus on the appearance, but the B and C is missing, which is the behavior and the communication aspects. So that's definitely one of the biggest mistakes. I think another thing is that people follow trends rather than what is actually genuine and authentic to them. So for example, people will see like maybe how people do their videos. They can see that, like, how some people, like, for example, they have a style of sarcasm in how they communicate, and it's working for their target audience. People find it funny. People can relate. You're just like, oh, but that's what's working. Like, it seems like everybody's always doing like funny videos. And then you're just like, yes, I'm going to start doing funny videos. And not that there's anything wrong with like, doing a study on, what's working, what's not working, and seeing where you can adapt. But I think there's a line between thinking that you have to curate this personal brand that appears to be working for somebody if it's not genuine or authentic to you. I think genuine and authentic personal brand image is what lasts. If you do something that is not authentic to you, you will find that after a couple of months, you're going to be worn out. You're going to be like, I can't keep up with this image. Like, I just...
makes sense.
I just can't. So a lot of work that I do when I'm working with women, especially in the initial stages, is that I really want them to do a lot of self-reflection. Like, what is genuine and authentic to you? And then let's build something that is tailored to that so that it can last. Because authenticity will never die out. Like, authenticity will never go out of fashion. Like, you would always stay true to who you are, to your values, and your brand will continue to reflect that. So that's definitely another mistake I see. People just following trends. Like, everybody is doing like this minimalist thing, so I'm going to do this. Listen, if you're extra, be extra.
It's like you say, look at your lifestyle first, then make decisions based on that, because it makes it just so much more natural.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. Okay, stepping away from image for a moment, because you're a pastor as well.
Yeah.
You're also an amazing speaker, preacher. I've had the privilege of seeing that. And I want to tap into a little bit of that.
Okay.
So when you think of fruitfulness, what comes to mind? When you think of the word fruitfulness, what comes to mind? What's your perspective on it?
So I think fruitfulness and bearing fruit, I think the scripture that comes to mind is a scripture that speaks about when we abide in Christ, we will bear much fruit. And I've just paraphrased the scripture. I'm sure it doesn't say it exactly like that, but maybe you put it up somewhere in the video. And so I think being able to produce and not just to produce any kind of fruit comes from, especially as a Christian, I think the key factor there is the abiding in God and abiding in Christ. And so I think bearing fruit, whether it's in relation to our walk as Christians or in relation to, because everything that we do, I know a lot of times people isolate, for example, their work, and people isolate their business, and people isolate relationships and marriages from that Christian factor, and they do it subconsciously. But everything we do, the fruits that we bear in every aspect of our lives, needs to flow from that place of abiding in God. I think the overflow comes from there, because I think the fruit that you bear will be based on what it is that you're rooted in. If you're rooted, if you're rooted in like the validation from men, you will notice that in your attempt to bear fruit in your business, it will be coming from a place of wanting to please people, right? You will notice that even in relationships, you will notice that in your work and in all of these things. So you will, whatever it is that is coming out of you will be dependent on whatever it is that you are rooted and grounded in. So that's what fruitfulness looks like to me. It's about abiding in God and allowing everything that comes out of me to flow from there, like really being rooted and grounded. And what does that look like practically? Honestly, it's about spending time with the Lord. It's about the simple things that I think that we are neglecting these days because everybody wants to be deep. But it's really about really spending time with the Lord. It's about really reading his word. And when I mean reading his word, like really getting an insight into God's nature, his mind, his character, and all of those things, and becoming one with it, and then allowing everything from your life to flow from that place. And so I think that's what it looks like.
Have you ever had a time in your life where you thought, oh my gosh, I'm not being as fruitful as I know I'm called to be? And can you tell us about that and tell us how you overcame it?
I've had many moments, even not too long ago. And I think that's because, I think we judge fruitfulness by, so for example, you just have a list of goals, and I think goals are absolutely amazing. I have goals, but I think we judge fruitfulness by, we have all this list of goals, and if we're not able to tick those goals, then we would judge ourselves to be unfruitful. And so I've had many moments where I just felt like, you know what, I'm not doing what, and rightfully so. I think there were moments where it was true, like I just wasn't producing. I just wasn't really doing. There was just procrastination with a lot of things. And for me, when I was going through that season, I realized that what it was that was behind my ability to actually take a step of faith and to begin to do the things and produce was just fear. There was a lot of fear. There was a lot of doubt. I know people use this word a lot, and but a lot of imposter syndrome. They're like, I don't feel like I'm really qualified to do this, even though a lot of things God had said, this is what I'm calling you to do, and God had placed that desire in my heart. But the procrastination in me not taking those steps came from a place of fear. Like, this is not going to work. Is that fear of failure? Like who am I? Like, I'm just going to show up on the scene and say, hey, like, I'm an image consultant. Like, I can help you with this, right? Like, who am I? Like, I don't have years of qualification in this thing. I just have a passion. I have a desire. I've been learning about it. I've been reading about it. So prior to the point where I actually started this thing, I realized that the actual roots of my unproductivity was fear and doubt, and imposter syndrome and feeling unqualified. And so how did I address it? I think I did it through prayer. I think I did it through really meditating on what God has said concerning me and concerning my life. And it's also speaking to trusted voices and counsel and actually getting support. Because I think sometimes we try to address these things by ourselves, but you need support. Like sometimes you need to speak to trusted voices, like voices that, you know, you can trust their wisdom and trust their counsel and say, hey, you know what, I'm struggling in this area. And I spoke to somebody and they actually said to me, Tosin, right, I'm going to help you put the system together, for example. And so when I was going to start Anno Gold, I didn't even know how to like edit a video. I can't even lie. And I had somebody edit my video for me. And that was going to be like a hindrance between me actually putting it out because I just couldn't do it. And so, I hope that answers, answers the question.
It's a really good example. And I believe it will encourage someone who may be in a similar position right now. So going back to appearance and image, what's one thing that someone could do this week that would elevate their confidence and their appearance and their image? And you can speak directly to the camera. So there's someone on the other side of the screen or the other side of their headphones and they want to know what's that one thing that they can do this week that will help them to elevate their image.
Right. Okay. So I think the first thing I want to say, that's the camera, right?
Yes.
So I think the first thing I want to say to put a disclaimer before I actually give the practical tip is that confidence comes from within. I think that's the ultimate thing I'll say to people. Confidence comes from within. And I think the external appearance and how you look on the outside is just a reinforcement of what is taking place on the inside. But a practical tip that you can do this week is declutter that wardrobe. Okay. I think one of the biggest things that you could do is look at, it might seem like just a physical exercise to do, but I promise you when you actually start to do it, like there's something that will be taking place in your mind, like getting rid of those clothes in your wardrobe that no longer serve any purpose. For example, they don't even fit anymore. You know, they're too old. They don't align with like who you are now. Like you've had that stuff for like 6-7 years. You've never worn it. Just do a big declutter. And it's going to be a tough thing to do because I remember the first time I did like a massive decluttering of my wardrobe, like it was hard because I was looking at certain things that represented who I was and I didn't want to let go. So when you're doing that exercise, you need to think about who is it that I am trying to become and what is the message I'm trying to pass across? Like I want my wardrobe to reflect where I'm trying to get to. And I think with that in mind, then begin to declutter. Then you can sit down and say to yourself, right, what do I then need to include and fill that gap with based on the things that you've let go of? So I hope that helps. I promise you it'll be life-changing.
Amazing. I'm going to do it this week. I'm going to send you pictures.
Oh,
honestly.
please do.
Literally,
please do.
Even like,
please do.
this week I was looking at my cupboard and I was like,
what's going on?
Honestly, I have so many clothes in the cupboard, under my bed, and I'm like, why?
Yeah, you
I
don't
have the
need
same
too much.
clothes on rotation anyway.
So
it needs to change. It's too much. I think sometimes that mindset of, but I might need it.
Yeah.
And there are times where you might need it, but is it really worth it for that one occasion? Sometimes it's not. So I'm going to be taking your advice.
Please do. Another thing is that, just another thing is that you don't need too much stuff in your wardrobe. Like people are really shocked when they come to like my house and they see my wardrobe. They're expecting to see like a lot of stuff, but I don't have a lot of, because I think decision fatigue is a real thing. So you can actually have a curated wardrobe. You don't need too much. I just want to add that in there. So when you're thinking about, I need to rebrand, it doesn't need to be excessive. Like you can have a few of a couple, like as long as it's in line with your style, you can have a few pair of jeans, a few pair of blazers, a few pair of tops. And if you have a special occasion, if it's not within your wardrobe, then you can get something, right? But in terms of like your everyday life, you don't need too much, really. Just thought I'll add that in there. So people are not overwhelmed and feel like, now I have to do all
go shopping
and do all of these things. No, you don't. You actually don't really have to rebrand. You don't have to.
And I've been hearing all this debate about fast fashion and stuff like that, and people are slowly moving to like, what's the word? More sustainable fashion, which obviously is more expensive, but people are talking more about pieces rather than just buying loads of dresses and stuff like that. So moving towards that can help as well.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming. It's been a pleasure. I've loved talking with you about it. I've been meaning to talk to you about this anyway, so I'm really glad we got to do it here as well. Thank you so much for coming. So that ends today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. Why don't you place in the comments something that you'll be doing this week to elevate your image? See you in the next episode.